Hello everyone, and welcome back to Terrifying Bedtime Tales. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. The forest had always been a place of solace for Lena, a sanctuary to escape the noise of the world. But after a breakup that shattered her, she sought something more, something deeper. They said the rain could cleanse you of your grief, so she ventured into the woods known for its haunting folklore, hoping to wash away the ache in her heart. But as the rain poured down, she stumbled upon a woman in the mist, a drenched figure with eyes that burned through her soul. The woman claimed to be the guardian of the forest, warning her that the rain marked the return of something ancient, something hungry. And as the night closed in, Lena realized the storm wasn't just cleansing her, it was awakening something she couldn't escape. Lena stood by the window, watching the gray clouds settle over the hills. A summer storm was coming, a strange sense of relief accompanying it. She'd spent the past few days holed up in her small apartment, nursing the jagged edges of a broken heart. The breakup with Eli had been sudden, the kind of raw, painful separation that left you questioning everything about yourself and your future. With no other plans, and a restless desire to escape the city's endless hum, Lena decided to hike into the nearby forest. The locals called it Sibian Hollow, a sprawling woodland steeped in myth and mystery. It had long been associated with the ancient folk tales of the region, stories about the rain witch, being said to control the weather and the forest itself. The idea of walking among the trees while the rain cleansed her seemed strangely fitting. She packed her bag with only the essentials, a bottle of water, a first aid kit, and her favorite old leather jacket. It was a comforting presence against the crispness in the air, a reminder of simpler times before life became so complicated. As Lena drove through the winding roads, the clouds began to darken and the winds shifted. By the time she parked her car at the edge of Sibian Hollow, the first raindrops began to fall. The forest stood before her like a vast, ancient cathedral, its canopy dark and looming. She pulled her hood up and grabbed her pack, stepping out into the rain. The steady downpour had already begun to obscure her vision, turning the path ahead into a shadowy blur. Still, she moved forward, letting the rhythm of her footsteps and the rain guide her. The trees whispered in the wind, and the scent of damp earth filled the air. Everything seemed alive, pulsing with energy, as if the forest was breathing with her. Her mind wandered back to the breakup. She had thought Eli was the one. Their love had been perfect, or so she had convinced herself. But when he ended it, everything she believed in shattered. His words echoed in her mind. "You're too much for me, Lena. I can't handle this anymore." The phrase had no explanation, no reason. It was just the breaking of something once beautiful. She clenched her fists as the rain poured harder, the droplets slapping against her skin, washing away the tears she hadn't yet shed. Maybe the rain would help her forget. Maybe the forest would provide some sort of healing she didn't even know she needed. The forest grew darker, the mist thickening as the rain intensified. Lena pushed forward, her boots squelching in the mud. The air felt heavier, pressing down on her chest with an almost suffocating force. She paused for a moment, wiping the water from her brow, and then something caught her attention. A movement just ahead, a shadow in the mist. Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't alone. Through the fog, she saw her, a woman, standing still beneath the twisted boughs of an ancient oak. Her hair was long and drenched, clinging to her face like wet strands of thread. She was dressed in a dark gown, her posture unnervingly still, her eyes glowing faintly in the mist. Lena froze, unsure whether to approach or turn back. The figure was like something from a dream, a haunting vision that didn't quite belong in the world she knew. The woman's gaze locked onto Lena's, and for a moment, it felt like the world stopped spinning. Time seemed to stretch, the air growing impossibly heavy. "You seek solace," but you do not know what you walk toward. The woman's voice broke the silence, smooth and cold as the rain itself. Lena's breath caught in her throat. "Who are you?" The woman tilted her head slightly, as though considering Lena's question. "I am the guardian of these woods. I am the Rain Witch." Lena stepped back, unease creeping up her spine. "The Rain Witch? I thought that was just a legend." "Many think it is legend," the witch replied, her eyes never leaving Lena's. "But legends are born of truth. The rain you feel now is not an ordinary storm. It marks the return of something ancient, something that hungers for what you carry inside." Lena's stomach twisted with confusion and fear. "I don't understand. What do you mean?" The witch stepped closer, her feet making no sound on the wet earth. "The forest has stirred, and you have come at the wrong time. The rain has awoken the hunger of what lies beneath. The creature it calls is not satisfied with the hearts of men alone." A chill ran through Lena's body, her heart pounding in her chest. "Creature? What creature?" The witch's eyes flickered briefly, as though acknowledging something unseen behind Lena. "It is ancient. It is patient. And now it is hungry." The words lingered in the air like a curse, the forest around them seemingly holding its breath. Lena stepped back, instinctively wanting to flee, but the witch's gaze held her in place. "You can leave if you wish," the witch continued, her voice softer now, though it still carried the weight of something timeless. "But beware, the creature waits for those who dare to run." Lena's mind raced. She had read about the folklore, the stories that had circulated around Sivian Hollow for generations. The Rain Witch, the forest spirits, the creature that had once been a part of the old world. But none of it had seemed real, not until now. "How do I stop it?" Lena found herself asking, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. The witch smiled a cold, knowing smile. "You cannot stop it, but you can keep it from claiming you. Trust me, and I will show you the way." Lena hesitated. Could she trust this woman, this creature of myth? Was she the key to escaping whatever ancient force had been awakened? Or was she a part of it, leading her straight into danger? Before she could speak, the forest around them shifted. The wind howled, and the trees seemed to groan, their branches twisting in unnatural directions. The ground beneath Lena's feet trembled, and the air grew thick with a strange, otherworldly presence. The witch's smile faded, replaced by a look of grim determination. "Now," the witch said, "you must decide. Will you trust me and follow the path I offer, or will you run and become what the forest has claimed?" Lena's heart raced. She didn't know what to do. The choice felt impossible. Something deep within her, the same part of her that had once trusted Eli, whispered that she had no other option. She had to trust the witch, or she would be lost forever. "I'll follow," Lena said, her voice trembling but resolute. The witch nodded slowly, then turned and began walking deeper into the mist. Lena hesitated for a moment longer, but when she heard the distant sound of something moving in the trees, something large, something heavy, she stepped forward, following the witch. The rain fell harder. The air grew denser as Lena followed the witch through the winding, shadowed paths of the forest. The trees, once towering and majestic, now appeared twisted, their bark dark and slick as the rain lashed down around them. The mist clung to everything like a veil, obscuring her vision beyond a few feet. Every sound, every rustle in the distance felt amplified, as though the forest itself was alive, watching, listening, waiting. Lena's heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't sure if it was fear of the witch or something else that had settled into her bones, but she knew one thing. She couldn't turn back. The weight of the witch's words echoed in her mind. The creature waits for those who dare to run. She didn't know if the witch was friend or foe, but the growing sense of danger left little room for doubt. Her only chance was to follow. The witch led her down a narrow trail, her movements graceful despite the heavy rain, her soaked hair clinging to her face, blending with the mist. She walked without a word, but Lena couldn't shake the feeling that she was being tested. as if every step was being measured. She wanted to ask questions, but her voice seemed lost in the oppressive silence. The forest grew darker with each passing minute, the light from the sky barely penetrating the thick canopy above. The storm intensified, the wind picking up speed and pushing the rain sideways. The path beneath Lena's feet became slippery, the ground giving way to pools of water. Her boots sank into the mud with every step. "You seek to understand." The witch's voice finally broke the silence, startling Lena. "But some things cannot be explained. The creature is as old as the forest itself, a force born from the darkness that lies beneath." Lena shivered, not from the cold, but from the sensation of something ancient, something unfathomable, pressing in around them. The witch paused, turning to face her. "It sleeps in the roots of these trees, and when the rain falls, when the mist rises, it stirs." Hungry, Lena's throat went dry. "And you? You're the guardian?" The witch's eyes gleamed, a flicker of something darker passing over her face. "I am the protector of the balance. The forest has its rules. The creature feeds on the fear and despair of those who enter its domain. It is drawn to the broken hearts, the lost souls." Lena's chest tightened. "The broken hearts." Eli's words echoed in her mind again, the same crushing weight that had followed her here. The thought of the creature feeding on the pain she carried made her stomach churn. The witch continued, her voice lower now, as if she were speaking a secret only the forest could hear. "The rain marks the return of something ancient, something that cannot be contained. The more it feeds, the stronger it becomes. But there is a way to stop it if you are willing." Lena swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. "How? How do I stop it?" The witch's eyes glinted with something unsettling. "You must give it something that will quiet its hunger. The forest will take what it needs. The question is, are you willing to pay the price?" Lena's breath caught. Pay the price? She wanted to run, to escape whatever twisted ritual the witch was offering. But deep down, a strange compulsion kept her moving forward. She had come here for solace, for release, but now it seemed as though the forest was making her part of its own story, one she could not escape. Before she could respond, a low growl echoed from the distance, deep in the forest. Lena froze. The sound was unlike anything she had ever heard, an unnatural, guttural rumble that vibrated in the air. The witch's face hardened, her eyes narrowing. She turned sharply, as if sensing something in the very ground beneath her feet. "It's here," the witch whispered. "You must make your choice now. Do you trust me? Do you trust the forest?" Lena's heart pounded in her chest. Her mind was spinning. The rain, the mist, the strange force pulling her deeper into the woods. Everything felt wrong, as if the very earth beneath her was conspiring against her. She didn't know what the witch meant by paying the price, but the growing terror in her chest urged her to act. She couldn't let whatever it was take her. Lena's voice cracked, but she forced the words out. "I'll trust you. I'll do whatever it takes." The witch nodded once sharply. "Follow me." Quickly, without another word, the witch turned and led Lena into the trees. The air felt heavier now, the ground slick and treacherous as they moved quickly through the forest. The distant growl grew louder, closer, but Lena didn't dare look back. Her heart raced, her breath quickening, as if the very act of running was pushing her further into the grasp of something dark. Suddenly, the path opened up, revealing a small clearing in the woods. In the center stood a massive stone circle, half covered in moss, its jagged edges rising up like ancient teeth. The rain pounded on the stones, but inside the circle, the ground was dry, as though the storm had no power there. Lena's eyes widened as she stepped into the clearing. In the center of the circle, the earth was cracked open, revealing a jagged pit that seemed to lead deep into the bowels of the earth. The smell was acrid, like rot and decay, and something darker lingered in the air. The witch stopped at the edge of the pit, turning to Lena with an almost sorrowful expression. "This is where it sleeps, and this is where you will make your offering." Lena shook her head. panic rising in her throat. What offering? What do you mean? The witch didn't answer immediately. Instead, she extended her hand, palm up, toward Lena. The forest requires a heart to quiet the creature's hunger, a soul to feed the darkness. Lena's blood ran cold. No, I don't. You must decide. The witch interrupted, her voice sharp. If you do not, the creature will take you, and then it will take everything. The pain you carry, the fear, the brokenness. It will consume it all. Lena's thoughts spun wildly. The witch's words felt like a spell, weaving themselves around her mind. She glanced down at the crack in the earth. Something stirred deep within, a sense of dread and something darker that pressed against her skin. The growl from the forest grew louder, closer, almost upon them. The witch stepped closer, her gaze intent on Lena. The creature is close. You must choose. If you offer your heart, your pain, it will be enough to silence it. Lena's breath caught. Her heart ached with the weight of everything she had been through. The hurt from Eli, the loneliness that had followed, the shattered remnants of her life. All of it pressed on her chest like a physical weight. And now, the witch was asking for it. But as the growl reached a deafening crescendo, Lena realized there was no choice anymore. The rain beat against her, the wind howled, and the pit before her seemed to beckon, dark, endless. Lena took a step forward, knowing deep down that whatever decision she made here, it would change everything. Lena stood at the edge of the stone circle, her heart hammering in her chest, the weight of the witch's words pressing on her like an unbearable force. The pit before her seemed to pulse, the darkness at its center alive with something ancient and hungry. Her fingers tingled with the sensation of an unseen presence, something watching her, waiting. The growl that had been echoing from the forest was now deafening, the sound vibrating the air around them. The trees swayed unnaturally in the wind, their branches twisting, their leaves rustling, as if they were being drawn toward the clearing. Lena's eyes darted nervously over her shoulder, but the mist was thick, swallowing up everything beyond the circle. She couldn't see the creature, but she could feel it. Something was coming. You must make your choice, the witch said again, her voice now softer, more insistent. She stepped closer, her eyes dark pools that seemed to pull Lena in. Offer your heart, offer your pain, your despair, and the creature will be satisfied. If not, the witch didn't finish the sentence. The implications were clear enough. Lena felt her knees weaken. She wanted to run, wanted to escape this twisted nightmare, but she knew that would be futile. The growl was no longer distant. It was close, closer than she wanted to admit. The air around her thickened, becoming oppressive, as though the very atmosphere were alive with malice. A flash of movement caught her eye, a blur in the mist. Her pulse shot up, and she turned toward it, instinctively stepping back. A figure emerged from the fog. At first it was just a shadow, but as it drew closer, Lena's blood ran cold. It was tall, towering over her, its body hunched in a grotesque way. The figure moved with unnatural speed, the heavy footsteps crunching the wet earth beneath it, each step like a drumbeat of doom. Lena's breath caught in her throat as the creature came into full view. It was no longer a shadow, no longer just a presence in the dark. It was a twisted, monstrous thing, its skin a sickly gray, mottled with patches of blackened veins. Its eyes, two pools of molten amber, burned with hunger, fixed on Lena with terrifying intensity. The creature's mouth was open, its lips curled back in a silent snarl, revealing rows of jagged teeth that glistened like knives. It was the stuff of nightmares, but it was real. It was here. Lena's feet refused to move. The growl grew louder, deepening, vibrating the air around them, and she felt the ground beneath her tremble. Her mind raced for a plan, for something, anything to save her. But the truth was clear now. This thing wanted her fear, wanted her pain. The witch raised her hand, her fingers outstretched toward Lena. Give it to the forest. Give it to the hunger before it consumes you. Her voice was distant now, as if the witch were already fading into the shadows herself. Lena's stomach turned. This is it. I have to make a choice. The rain fell in heavy sheets, soaking through Lena's clothes, making her shiver, making her feel like she was drowning. The hunger in the creature's eyes seemed to draw the very life from her. The smell of rot, earth, and decay filled her nostrils, as if the forest itself had come alive, a living, breathing entity bent on feeding. The witch spoke again, but her voice was now more like a whisper, echoing strangely in the air. Offer it your heart, and it will rest. Refuse, and it will take more than you can imagine. The words felt like a curse, each syllable weighing down on Lena, sinking her deeper into a sense of despair. She could feel the pain inside her rising, pain from the breakup with Eli, from the loneliness that had plagued her for months, from the emptiness that had followed her, relentless, suffocating. The creature's hunger seemed to feed off it, pulling at her like a gravitational force, drawing out every last ounce of sorrow. The growl grew louder again, now a low, continuous rumble that seemed to come from deep within the creature's chest. It was getting closer. Lena's breath caught in her throat. Her vision blurred. She thought of Eli, of the life they had once shared, of the love she thought would last forever. But it was gone now, ripped from her in a moment of cruel, inexplicable rejection. And now, in the midst of this nightmare, she realized just how fragile it all was, how fleeting love and joy could be. A scream escaped her lips, raw and wild, a desperate release of everything she had held inside. The forest seemed to absorb the sound, the trees groaning in response, and the wind howled through the branches. Suddenly, the witch's hand shot out, grabbing Lena's arm with unnatural strength. "You must choose," she hissed, her face twisted in a cruel expression. Her eyes glowed with an intensity that Lena had never seen before, like twin lanterns in the darkness. Lena's chest heaved with panic. She couldn't think. She didn't know if she could trust the witch. She didn't know if there was any way to escape this nightmare. Then the creature moved again. It lurched forward, its body undulating in a sickening way, its mouth opening wider with each step it took, its teeth gleaming, dripping with something black and viscous. The hunger in its eyes was palpable, insatiable. Lena's heart lurched, and the weight of the witch's offer crashed into her mind. "Offer my pain, offer my heart." She looked at the witch, and for the first time, she saw something akin to pity in the witch's eyes, a sorrow that was not her own. What price is this? But there was no time to question it. The creature was upon them now, its breath hot and foul against the rain-soaked air. It opened its mouth wider, and Lena felt the darkness pulling her in. In that moment of despair, Lena felt her soul, her very being, teetering on the edge of oblivion. She closed her eyes, whispered Eli's name one final time, and reached deep within herself to gather the remnants of the pain that had haunted her. She offered it all. I give it," Lena whispered through trembling lips. The witch's eyes flickered, and for a brief moment, the storm around them seemed to pause. The trees stilled. The rain slowed, falling in a gentle rhythm. Then, without warning, the ground trembled beneath Lena's feet, and a deafening roar erupted from the pit in the center of the stone circle. The creature, suddenly motionless, seemed to freeze. Its amber eyes lost their glow, turning dull and lifeless, as if the hunger within it had been silenced. The air grew cold, the pressure lifting slightly, as if the forest itself had exhaled. The witch stepped back, her face expressionless. "It is done," she murmured. For now, Lena looked down at her hands, trembling. The weight of what she had done was settling in, but she didn't have the energy to process it. Her entire body was shaking, her breath coming in short, desperate gasps. The creature, once a terrifying, ravenous force, now lay still, its body deflated and lifeless. It was as though the rain had washed away its power, the forest now reclaiming what had been disturbed. The witch turned, her figure dissolving into the mist. "You will leave now," she said softly, her voice carrying an almost mournful tone. "And remember, there is always a price to pay." Lena barely registered her words. She only felt the cold rain against her skin as she stumbled away from the clearing, her legs weak, her heart numb. The creature was gone. The hunger was silenced. But Lena knew deep down that it was not over. Not truly. The forest had claimed its payment, and she was now part of its dark, twisted lore. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth as Lena stumbled back through the mist, her mind spinning with the aftermath of the ritual. The storm had not entirely lifted, but the rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, as if the forest was sighing in relief. The ground beneath her feet felt oddly solid, as if the forest itself had released its grip on her, allowing her to move. But the weight of the witch's words still clung to her, like a shadow that would not leave. "You will leave now," the witch had said. "And remember, there is always a price to pay." Lena's legs shook with exhaustion, her body drenched in both rain and sweat. Her heart felt heavy, suffocated by the weight of what she had done. She had offered her pain, her heartbreak, her sorrow, everything that had plagued her for months. She had given it all to the forest in an attempt to silence the ancient hunger that had stalked her. But the feeling that something still lingered in the darkness gnawed at her. As she stumbled forward, the trees around her seemed to shift, their branches creaking with a sound that was almost alive. The mist, once a gentle veil, now curled around her like a tightening noose. It was hard to see beyond a few feet, but every rustle in the distance, every whisper of the wind, made her skin crawl. The forest, it seemed, was not done with her. The path she had once followed back to the clearing now appeared unfamiliar, as though the very land had shifted in the aftermath of the ritual. Every step Lena took felt heavier, as if the earth itself was resisting her escape. The growl that had once been so distant now echoed in her ears, faint but unmistakable, a lingering echo of the creature, a reminder of the ancient hunger. Lena's breath quickened. The woods seemed endless now, stretching on in all directions, with no sign of the way out. The weight of the forest's secrets pressed down on her, closing in, as though it were waiting for her to remember something important, something she had forgotten. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet gave way, and she stumbled, her body lurching forward. She reached out instinctively, her hands bracing against the earth, but the ground was slick, and there was nothing to grab onto. With a cry, she fell, the muddy soil giving way beneath her, and she tumbled into a shallow ravine that had opened up beneath her. Lena landed hard, the breath knocked out of her as she skidded down the wet incline. Her body ached, her chest heaving as she tried to regain her bearings. The rain fell heavier now, drenching her even more thoroughly. She could feel the chill seeping into her bones. She looked up, her heart racing. The ravine seemed to stretch deep into the earth, the walls on either side slick with moss and mud. The ground at the bottom was uneven, filled with strange shapes, rocks, broken branches, and something else. Something darker. A faint movement caught her eye, and Lena's breath hitched in her throat. Something was moving in the shadows at the bottom of the ravine. She could barely make it out, but it was there, lurking just beyond the edge of her vision. And then, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. Lena scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest. Her legs trembled beneath her, but she forced herself to move. She had to get out of here. The forest was changing, shifting. Something was coming, and it was coming for her. The growl she had heard earlier reverberated through the ravine again, louder now, more menacing. It was closer, unmistakably close, as if the very earth was trembling in anticipation. Lena's mind raced. She had done everything the witch had asked, offered her pain, her sorrow, her broken heart to the forest. So why was this still happening? Why was the hunger still there, still stalking her, still hunting her? Panic surged through her, and she turned, stumbling toward the distant edge of the ravine. She had to climb out, had to escape. The shadows in the ravine grew darker, and for a split second, she thought she saw something in the darkness. eyes glowing with hunger waiting. A scream tore from her throat as she scrambled up the slick incline, her fingers slipping on the wet earth. The growl grew louder, closer, almost deafening now. The creature, or whatever it was near. It was so close she could almost feel its breath on her skin. With every inch she gained, the earth seemed to fight back, the mud sucking at her feet, pulling her back down. Desperation fueled her, and with one final, frantic push, she reached the top of the ravine. She collapsed onto solid ground, gasping for breath, her heart pounding in her chest. But the moment she looked up, her breath caught in her throat. The witch was standing before her, her figure appearing out of the mist like a phantom. Her drenched hair hung in strands around her face, and her eyes glowed with an eerie, unsettling light. "You are still here," the witch said, her voice soft, almost mournful. "You made the offering, but you did not understand the cost. The forest does not forget, and neither does the hunger." Lena's eyes widened with horror. "What do you mean?" "I did what you said. I gave it all." The witch's expression softened for a moment, but the pity in her eyes quickly faded, replaced with something darker. "The offering was accepted, yes, but the creature does not feed on just sorrow or pain. It feeds on the essence of what is given. And your heart, your sorrow, it was not enough?" Lena's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean it wasn't enough?" "The forest always requires a price greater than the one who offers," the witch explained, her voice tinged with regret. "You cannot rid yourself of your pain without leaving behind a piece of your soul. Your grief was not enough to satiate the creature. It needs more. And now it has come for you?" Lena's eyes widened in realization, and before she could react, a cold wind blew through the forest, knocking her off her feet. She felt a presence behind her, a massive, shadowy figure emerging from the mist. The creature. It was here. The ground beneath her began to tremble once more as the creature's growl reverberated through the air. Lena could feel it now, feel the immense weight of its presence bearing down on her. The witch turned, her face unreadable, but there was no escape. The trees seemed to close in around them, the forest alive with something sinister. Lena scrambled backward, her mind spiraling in panic. She had to escape, had to survive, but the hunger in the forest was unstoppable now, insatiable, and it would take everything. The rain began to fall again, harder this time, the storm unleashing its fury. And as the mist thickened, the creature's eyes locked on Lena, and she realized with a final, terrible clarity, there would be no escape. Lena's heart raced, her breaths ragged as the creature loomed behind her. The rain beat down harder now, pounding against her skin like a relentless drum, blurring her vision and soaking her to the bone. The air felt heavy, suffocating, as though the very atmosphere was thick with the creature's hunger. She tried to move, to run, but her legs felt like they were made of stone. The weight of her fear, her regret, her broken heart, it was all there, dragging her down, keeping her rooted in place. The forest around her seemed to pulse, the trees swaying as if the land itself was alive, waiting, watching. The witch, once an ominous figure, now appeared eerily calm. She watched Lena with those unsettling eyes, her hands clasped in front of her as the creature's growl reverberated through the mist. "Leave now," the witch said, her voice barely above a whisper, but her tone was filled with an eerie finality. "You cannot run. The forest has already claimed you." Lena's mind was spinning. She couldn't understand. She had given everything, the pain, the sorrow. She had offered it all to the forest, to the creature, to end the torment. Why wasn't it enough? Desperation clawed at her chest. "Please, please, you have to help me. I gave it. I gave you everything. Why is it still coming for me?" The witch's expression softened for a moment, and she took a step forward, her eyes flickering with what could have been sympathy. "The forest does not take what you offer freely, Lena. The hunger, the creature, it feeds on more than just your pain. It feeds on your very soul, the essence of who you are. You cannot bargain with the ancient forces of this land. They do not care for your grief. They only care for power. Lena's eyes widened. Her heart felt like it was being ripped from her chest, the weight of the truth settling in. "So, it's not over," she whispered, her voice breaking. "No," the witch replied quietly. "Not unless you make another choice. A true sacrifice." Lena's mind spun, her pulse hammering in her ears. The creature was growing closer, the shadows of its form becoming clearer as the mist parted. It moved with terrifying speed, its monstrous body looming like a nightmare brought to life. Its eyes were fixed on her, those molten amber eyes that burned with insatiable hunger. The witch stepped back, her gaze shifting toward the creature, her lips curling into a faint smile. "You see, Lena," she said, her voice oddly serene, "the hunger cannot be satisfied without a true offering. One that demands everything, your heart, your soul, your very life." Lena's breath caught in her throat. A true offering. She understood what the witch meant now, and it filled her with a cold dread. To escape this, she would have to give more than just her pain. She would have to give up everything. The creature's growl was deafening now, the ground trembling beneath her feet. Its mouth hung open, revealing rows of jagged teeth, dripping with some vile, dark substance. It was hungry, and it wasn't going to stop until it had fed. "You don't have to do this," the witch said softly, almost as if offering comfort. "But the forest doesn't forget. And once you've been marked, it will always come for you. Always." Lena's chest tightened. She could feel the forest pressing in, the trees closing in around her, their branches like long, gnarled fingers reaching out for her. The creature was closing in. She had moments, minutes, before it was upon her. She could feel it, the pull of its hunger drawing her toward it, and with every passing second, it felt like her strength was fading. She could barely stand. Her body was numb, her heart heavy with the realization that she could not outrun this nightmare. Then in that moment it hit her. The sacrifice. The true offering. Her heart ached with the weight of the decision. If she didn't do something, the creature would consume her body and soul. There would be no escaping it. And even if she survived tonight, the forest's hunger would never cease. It would always be there, waiting for her, pulling at her, trying to claim her. But if she gave the final offering, if she gave it all, she could end this. She could save herself. Lena's hands trembled as she pressed them against her chest. She could feel the pulse of her heart, thumping like a drum, reminding her that the decision she made now would define her existence. She turned to the witch, her voice steady despite the terror rising within her. "What do I need to do?" The witch's smile deepened, her eyes gleaming with a dark satisfaction. "You must choose, Lena. You must choose to offer the last piece of yourself, the thing that keeps you alive, the thing that makes you human. Your life, your love, your very essence. It must be given freely. You can't hesitate. You must let it go. Only then will the hunger be satisfied." Lena closed her eyes, her heart breaking as she thought of Eli, of everything she had lost. It's the only way to be free of this torment, to escape. The storm in her chest raged louder than the one around her. She turned toward the creature, its amber eyes fixed on her, and she saw it, its hunger, its desire for her soul. She felt the cold hand of fear clutch her heart, but she did not let it stop her. Lena stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper as she spoke the final words, "I give myself. I give it all." A scream tore from her throat as the very air around her seemed to vibrate with the force of her decision. She felt herself unraveling, piece by piece, as the forest's darkness enveloped her. The creature's roar was deafening, and for a moment, Lena thought she might lose herself entirely in the overwhelming sensation. But then, as if on cue, everything stilled. The creature stopped moving. The witch's smile faded. The storm, the rain, the mist, all of it halted, the world holding its breath. Lena's body trembled, her heart racing with the intensity of the sacrifice she had made. It was done. The hunger had been appeased. She had offered herself to the forest, to the creature, and in return, she was freed. The witch stepped closer, her face now devoid of the cruel smirk it had held earlier. She placed a hand on Lena's shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm. "You made the right choice, Lena," she said softly. "The forest is appeased. You are free." Lena's eyes burned with exhaustion, her body sagging under the weight of everything she had given. She was empty now, emptied of her pain, her sorrow, her love. But she was alive. The witch stepped back, fading into the mist as the rain began to fall again, lighter now, like a gentle cleansing. The creature, once a terrifying presence, was gone, its hunger sated, its eyes no longer glowing with malice. Lena stood alone in the clearing, the forest quiet around her. The storm had passed, but she knew, deep down, that the rain had not just cleansed her soul, it had taken it. And so, the forest stood in its silence, waiting for the next soul to offer itself to the hunger.